Hello, my name is Dave Aguilar, and I'm the first native constructor. The topic we'll be reviewing today is obviously reproductive cloning. Our main policy statement is that human reproductive cloning should not be federally banned in the U.S. due to the fact that the benefits far outweigh the negatives produced. I'm going to talk about three major points. My first being that reproductive clones will possess as much individuality as you and I. Two, reproductive cloning is no more dangerous or unethical than any other legal artificial reproductive involved procedures. And three, that reproductive cloning is a procreative liberty born and destined in every human being. Back to my first claim that reproductive clones will possess as much individuality as you and I. According to Robert Wackroyd, PhD in epidemiology and public health, his article, Genetic Encores, The Ethics of Human Cloning, he states that cloning does not necessarily entail the creation of designer children because cloning recreates pre-existing DNA. It does not involve modifying or enhancing DNA in order to produce a child with certain desired traits. What this means basically is that we're not adding anything that wasn't already there. The only thing that we're doing is passing the genes from the parents onto the child. That's it. Secondly, our advocates would have you believe that reproductive cloning would diminish the sense of uniqueness in an individual. This is definitely a hasty generalization. Walter Wackroyd also writes in his article, Genetic Encores, that once prospective parents and society in general come to understand that cloned children will possess just as much individuality as any other person, it is possible that these fears and the attempts to control the child's future will largely abate. Furthermore, according to Dr. Patrick Harris, a philosopher and ethicist specializing in science, medicine, and technology, if a person were to believe the genetic determinism is true, then it follows that they believe that a cloned person would be psychologically identical with their genetic predecessor because they are almost genetically identical. And this is just scientifically not true. It's a proven fact that our environment shapes us more than anything. Secondly, to my second point, that reproductive cloning is no more dangerous or unethical than any other legal artificial reproductive involved procedure. According to Professor Vinay Kumar of the University of Chicago and Department Chair of Pathology, from the ones that do implant, and this is from natural reproduction, 2 to 3% of newborns suffer from congenital abnormalities of varying degrees and severity. Furthermore, according to the Supreme Court case in 1992, titled Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania versus Casey, it was stated that the woman who was going to have an abortion required that a woman seeking abortion give her informed consent, married woman notify her husband, and clinics provide information to a woman seeking an abortion and wait 24 hours to do so. Now, it would make perfect sense that if a woman was to go and say perhaps try and get a cloned baby, we couldn't just implement these same procedures of consent. I mean, we're not trying to hide anything. She knows exactly what she's getting into, as does the father, as long as they can communicate, as is federally, the law. Our advocates would also have you believe that the world is already overpopulated. So should we tell everyone to stop having children altogether? That's not a viable solution, nor a legitimate reason to ban reproducing cloning research. We'll miss out on entirely too much beneficiaries if we do away with it for such a trivial reason. Our advocates think that reproductive cloning will lead to a lack of diversity. This is also a dangerous assumption, considering each person's environment shapes that person uniquely, according to Dr. Walter Gannon, research chairman in biomedical ethics and ethical theory at the University of Calgary in Alberta, Canada. A cloned child's future would remain open, and there is no evidence that the child is denied something irreplaceably unique by not having a unique genetic code. Furthermore, according to Charles Bocklage, professor in the Department of Pediatrics in the Brody School of Medicine, natural production can itself produce dangerous results. Women dispose of fertilized eggs during their menstrual cycle more often than they're even aware. As many as 73% of fertilized eggs do not survive to 6 weeks gestation. Also, to my third point, that reproductive cloning is a procreative liberty born and destined to every human being. According to Richard McCormick, author of Should We Clone Humans, even if there is a positive right to procreate, the right is a prima facie rather than a categorical one, and it is not the case that in any step taken to combat infertility is in itself ethical. If a ban on cloning is justified, then a ban on many other forms of assisted reproduction and genetic selection should be as well. Yet few persons are willing to go that far. For instance, in vitro fertilization, or abortion, or any of those kinds of technologically assisted reproductive procedures. They are all in the same category. Also, according to John Robertson, lawyer and graduate of Dartmouth and Harvard Law, in his article, Reproductive Liberty and Cloning Humans, he says that because cloning may be the only way some people can produce, to deny cloning to these people would be a violation of procreative liberty. Clones also possess an inherent liberty once birth. According to PhD Alan Buchanan, professor of philosophy at Duke University, in sexual reproduction, a child may be a product of chance. A clone child would be a product of deliberate choice, which according to some philosophers could be a superior method of creation in some respects. This makes total sense because what happens when two people who didn't mean to have a child have a child? Does that mean that they care more about the child than somebody who actually plans to have that child born? Doubt it. That just doesn't make logical sense. In actuality, what makes more sense is that the parents who plan to have their child would care more about the child rather than just having it accidentally pop up and then having to take care of it afterwards, as like an afterthought. In conclusion, we believe that research done on and in the field of reproductive cloning does nothing but benefit the human race. Cures for diseases can be found. Parents incapable of having children can finally have a genetically related child to carry on their genes into the future. Organs can be grown and harvested for the sick who cannot find a genetic donor match. Eventually, if research can continue and progress, we will eventually be able to sequence out potentially fatal genetic mutations before they even become present in the code of such a predisposition child. How could any of these things be considered as evil or negative when the results of such research elevates the quality of life for the immediate involved? Thank you.